The taste of betrayal is metallic, like blood in your mouth when you bite your tongue too hard. I learned this the night Julie pushed me off the bridge, watching my body hit the icy water below while she clutched my lucky bead, the jade pendant my grandmother had given me on my 18th birthday. But death wasn't the end, not for me. I opened my eyes in my childhood bedroom, staring at the same faded wallpaper I'd seen every morning for 16 years. The calendar on my desk read March 15th, 2019, exactly 3 years before Julie would murder me. My hands trembled as I touched my neck, feeling for the familiar weight of the jade bead that should have been there. It wasn't, because in this timeline, I hadn't received it yet. Grandmother was still alive, still 2 years away from her final gift to me. But I remembered everything, every cruel laugh, every stolen opportunity, every lie Julie had whispered in others' ears to destroy my reputation. Most importantly, I remembered the secret she'd confessed right before pushing me. She'd been using my lucky bead's power for herself. The jade wasn't just jewellery. It was a family heirloom passed down through 5 generations of women, each one carving their birth date into its surface before passing it on. The bead absorbed their fortune, their luck, their destiny, and whoever wore it inherited all of it. Julie had discovered this truth by accident when she'd borrowed it for a job interview. That interview led to the position that should have been mine at Morrison & Associates. Every success that followed, every door that opened, every stroke of good fortune, it had all been stolen from me. But she'd made one crucial mistake. She'd killed me before learning how the bead really worked. I spent the next 2 years preparing. I studied every aspect of our shared history, noting the exact moments when Julie's luck would typically shift in her favour. I documented the dates, the circumstances, the outcomes. More importantly, I researched my family's genealogy, tracing the jade bead's journey through generations of my ancestors. The truth was more complex than Julie had understood. The bead didn't just grant luck to its wearer. It was bound to the birth dates carved into its surface, creating a supernatural link between the bearer and the cosmos. Each woman who'd owned it had enjoyed decades of prosperity, their fates intertwined with the jade's ancient power. But Julie had only worn it, never carved her own date. She'd been borrowing luck that belonged to my bloodline. When my 21st birthday arrived in March 2021, I was ready. Grandmother called me to her bedside 3 days before the anniversary of my death in the previous timeline. Her hand shook as she placed the jade bead in my palm, the same worn jade that had condemned me in another life. "This belonged to your great-great-grandmother Chen Li," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "She brought it from China in 1892, along with instructions written in characters so old I can barely read them. Each woman carves her birth date before passing it on. The jade remembers, Eleanor, it remembers everything." I nodded solemnly, pretending this was new information. "What does it do, Grandmother?" "It binds your fortune to the heavens themselves. As long as you wear it, as long as your birth date remains carved in its surface, you'll have the luck of all the women who came before you." Her fingers traced the worn characters etched into the jade surface. "But never let another wear it for long, child. Never let them carve their own date alongside yours. The jade can only serve one master at a time." After she passed the following week, I held the bead up to the lamp in my room, examining the birth dates carved in intricate Chinese characters. 5 dates, representing 5 generations of women. Mine would be the 6th. But I had other plans. That night, I sat at my desk with the ancient instructions Grandmother had left me, written on paper so old it felt like tissue between my fingers. The characters were indeed archaic, but I'd spent 2 years learning to read them. The jade's true power lay not just in wearing it, but in the specific ritual of date carving that bound the wearer's fate to the stone. The process required 3 elements: the jade itself, a silver needle blessed under moonlight, and the blood of the person whose fate would be bound to the stone. Most importantly, the date carved had to be astronomically accurate, not just the day and month, but the exact time and celestial positioning at the moment of birth. Julie's birthday was June 3rd, 1998, at 3:47 a.m. I knew this because I'd been there in the hospital waiting room when she was born, our mothers having been best friends since childhood. What Julie didn't know was that the hospital had recorded the wrong time. Her mother had been in labour for 18 hours, and the exhausted nurse had marked her birth time as 3:47 a.m, when she'd actually been born at 3:47 p.m, 12 hours later. This discrepancy would become my weapon. On the night of March 18th, under a full moon, I performed the binding ritual. Instead of carving my own birth date into the jade, I carved Julie's, but I used the incorrect time from her birth certificate, not her actual moment of birth. According to the ancient instructions, this would create what the text called a false binding. The jade would recognise Julie as its intended bearer, but the astronomical misalignment would cause her fortune to flow in reverse. Every stroke of good luck she should have received would become misfortune. Every door that should have opened would slam shut. Every opportunity meant for her would crumble to dust. The ritual required one final element. The jade had to be willingly accepted by its target. I couldn't simply force it on Julie. She had to choose to take it, to wear it, to believe in its power. This part would require the most delicate manipulation. I waited exactly 3 months, letting the jade's energy settle into its new configuration. During this time, I made subtle changes to our friendship dynamic. I became the supportive, encouraging friend Julie had always wanted, listening to her complaints about her stagnant career, her string of failed relationships, her growing frustration with life's seeming unfairness. "I just don't understand it," she said during one of our coffee dates in June. "Nothing ever works out for me anymore. It's like the universe has it in for me." I nodded sympathetically, my fingers unconsciously touching the jade bead beneath my shirt. "Maybe you need something to change your luck. My grandmother always said objects can hold power if you believe in them strongly enough." Julie laughed bitterly. "Like what? A rabbit's foot? A lucky penny?" "Actually," I said, as if the thought had just occurred to me, "I have something that might help. It's been in my family for generations. My grandmother swore it brought good fortune to whoever wore it." Her eyes lit up with interest. "Really?" I hesitated, as if reluctant to part with something so precious. "I don't know, Julie. It's been in my family for over a century. I'm not sure I should—" "Please, Eleanor," she interrupted, reaching across the table to grasp my hand. "I'm desperate. Nothing in my life is working anymore. If there's even a chance this could help." Hook, line, and sinker. I pulled the jade bead from beneath my shirt, letting it catch the afternoon sunlight streaming through the cafe window. Julie's breath caught as she stared at the intricate carvings, the deep green colour that seemed to shift and swirl in the light. "It's beautiful," she whispered. "It's yours," I said, lifting the chain over my head. "But promise me you'll wear it every day. The power only works if you keep it close to your heart." As I fastened the chain around her neck, I felt the exact moment the jade's energy shifted. The false binding activated, recognizing Julie as its bearer, while simultaneously rejecting her due to the astronomical misalignment I'd deliberately created. She smiled, touching the jade with reverent fingers. "I can feel it already, like warmth spreading through my chest." What she was actually feeling was her luck beginning to drain away, but I simply smiled and squeezed her hand. "I'm so happy I could help." The changes began within days. The first crack appeared on a Tuesday morning when Julie called me sobbing. "Eleanor, they fired me," she choked out between tears. Mr. Harrison called me into his office and said they were restructuring. After 4 years of perfect performance reviews, they're letting me go with 2 weeks severance. I sat in my car outside Morrison and Associates, watching her former colleagues stream into the building where I now worked. The irony wasn't lost on me. In my previous life, Julie had stolen this exact position through the jade's power. Now I held it legitimately while she faced unemployment. That's terrible, Julie. Did they give you a reason? They said the Peterson account complained about my work. But Eleanor, I've been their primary contact for 2 years. They loved me just last month. Her voice cracked. Something's wrong. Everything's been going wrong since... She stopped abruptly, but I knew what she'd almost said, since she'd started wearing the jade. Since what? I pressed gently. Nothing. It's just bad luck, I guess. Bad luck, if only she knew. Over the following weeks, I watched Julie's life unravel with surgical precision. The jade didn't cause random misfortune. It targeted the exact areas where she should have experienced success, corrupting each opportunity into disaster. The job interview she'd scheduled for the following Monday? The interviewer received an anonymous tip about a fabricated scandal from her previous employer. The apartment she'd applied for, the perfect 1-bedroom with morning sunlight? Another applicant offered double the deposit, despite Julie's application being submitted first. Even smaller things began to fail. Her coffee maker broke the same. Morning her car wouldn't start. Her phone screen cracked while sitting untouched on her kitchen counter. The dry cleaner lost her favourite dress, the one she'd worn to land her previous job. Each incident, taken alone, could be explained as coincidence. Together, they formed a pattern of supernatural interference that only I could see. Julie started coming to my apartment every few days, seeking comfort and advice. I played my role perfectly, the concerned friend, always ready with sympathy and solutions that would somehow make things worse. Maybe you should expand your job search, I suggested during one visit, knowing full well that every application she submitted would mysteriously disappear from hiring managers' desks. Cast a wider net. She clutched the jade bead as she spoke, a habit she'd developed since our first week wearing it. I've applied to 37 positions, Eleanor. 37. I've had 12 interviews, and each one ends the same way. They love me during the meeting, then send a rejection email within hours. Perhaps it's the market, I offered, pouring her another cup of tea. These things happen in cycles. But we both knew this wasn't market forces. This was something else entirely. The jade's influence extended beyond Julie's professional life. Her relationship with Alex, the architect she'd been dating for 6 months, deteriorated with startling speed. Arguments erupted from nowhere. Romantic dinners turned into disasters when restaurants lost their reservations or served spoiled food. A weekend getaway ended early when their hotel room flooded due to a burst pipe in a building that hadn't had plumbing issues in 15 years. It's like I'm cursed, Julie whispered during one of our coffee meetings in August. Dark circles shadowed her eyes, and she'd lost weight. The jade seemed heavier around her neck, pulling her shoulders forward. Everything I touched turns to ash. Don't be dramatic, I said, though my pulse quickened. She was beginning to suspect. No, Eleanor, listen to me. She leaned forward, gripping my wrist. Remember when we were kids and my mum used to read our horoscopes? She always said I was born under lucky stars. Jupiter in alignment, moon in the right phase, all that mystical stuff. But for the past 3 months, it's been the opposite, like the universe is actively working against me. I pulled my hand free gently. You're under stress. It's affecting your judgment. Then, explain this, she said, reaching into her purse. She pulled out a small notebook filled with her precise handwriting. I've been documenting everything that's gone wrong since June. Look at the dates, Eleanor. Look at the pattern. My blood chilled as I scanned her notes. She'd recorded every incident, every failure, every piece of misfortune. More troubling, she'd noted the exact times when things went wrong, and they all corresponded to astrologically significant moments when her true birth time would have aligned with positive cosmic events. Julie was mapping the jade's influence without realizing it. "This is unhealthy," I said, closing the notebook. "You're looking for patterns that don't exist." "Then why did everything change the day I started wearing this?" She touched the jade, and for a moment I swore I saw it pulse with dark energy. My mouth went dry. "What do you mean?" "The necklace, Eleanor. Your grandmother's necklace." Her eyes locked onto mine with uncomfortable intensity. "I've been wearing it for exactly 10 weeks, and I've been tracking my luck for exactly 10 weeks. The correlation is perfect." This was dangerous territory. If Julie began researching the jade's history, she might discover enough to break the binding. I needed to redirect her suspicions while reinforcing her dependence on the necklace. "Julie, you're scaring me," I said, injecting genuine concern into my voice. "You sound paranoid. Maybe you should see someone, talk to a professional about what you're going through." Her face flushed. "I'm not crazy, Eleanor." "I didn't say you were crazy, but grief manifests in strange ways, and losing your job was traumatic. This isn't grief." She stood abruptly, knocking over her coffee cup. The dark liquid spread across the table, soaking her notebook. "Something is happening to me, and it started the day you gave me this necklace." Several cafe patrons turned to stare. Julie's outburst was attracting attention, which served my purposes perfectly. Let others see her as unstable, desperate, possibly unhinged. "Sit down," I said quietly. "You're making a scene." She remained standing, her hands trembling as she dabbed at her ruined notes with napkins. "Maybe I should give it back to you?" "No." The word came out sharper than I'd intended. Julie's eyes widened at my tone, and I quickly softened my expression. "I mean, it was a gift, Julie. It belonged to my grandmother. If you don't want it anymore, that's fine, but I can't take it back. It wouldn't be right." This was a lie, of course. I could easily reclaim the jade, but that would break the willing acceptance required for the binding to work. Julie had to choose to keep wearing it, even as it destroyed her life. She sank back into her chair, looking defeated. "I don't know what to do anymore, Eleanor. I feel like I'm drowning." "You're going to be fine," I said, reaching across to squeeze her hand. "Sometimes life tests us. The important thing is not to give up." But even as I spoke the words, I could see something shifting in Julie's expression. A spark of suspicion, quickly suppressed, but definitely there. She was starting to question my role in her misfortune. I needed to be more careful. Julie was intelligent, and desperate people often saw truths that comfortable people missed. If she began investigating the jade's history, or worse, sought help from someone knowledgeable about supernatural objects, my entire plan could unravel. As we left the cafe, I noticed Julie tucking her ruined notebook into her purse instead of throwing it away. She was preserving evidence, building a case against forces she didn't yet understand. The hunter was becoming aware of the trap, but she was already too deep inside it to escape. 3 days later, Julie called me at midnight, her voice hollow with exhaustion. "Eleanor," she whispered, "I think someone is trying to destroy me." "What do you mean, someone's trying to destroy you?" I asked, though my heart hammered against my ribs. "I hired a private investigator," Julie said. "Richardson Detective Agency. I gave him everything, the timeline, the incidents, all my documentation. He found something, Eleanor, something impossible." I gripped the phone tighter. "Julie, it's midnight. You're not thinking clearly. Every single person who interfered with my job applications, who outbid me on apartments, who caused these accidents, they don't exist. Her voice carried a manic edge. The anonymous tipster who sabotaged my Peterson interview? The phone number traces to a disconnected line that was never assigned. The couple who outbid me on the Maple Street apartment, no record of them in any database. Even their bank transfer was processed through an account that shouldn't exist. My blood turned to ice. The jade's influence was more sophisticated than I'd understood. It wasn't just reversing Julie's fortune. It was creating phantom interference, manifesting supernatural obstacles that left no earthly trace. That's impossible, I managed. That's what I thought. But Richardson showed me the documents. Someone or something is orchestrating my downfall with surgical precision. She paused, and I heard papers rustling. I know how this sounds, but I think it's connected to the necklace. Julie, no, listen. I went to Chinatown yesterday, to Mrs. W's antique shop. You remember her, the old woman who used to read tea leaves for tourists? She took one look at the jade and started backing away like it was poison. Mrs. Wu. I remembered her from childhood trips to Chinatown with my grandmother. She was one of the few people in the city who still understood the old traditions, the ancient knowledge that most had forgotten. What did she say? I asked, dreading the answer. She said the jade was wrong, that someone had corrupted its binding, turned blessing into curse. She offered to cleanse it, but when she touched it, she jerked her hand back like she'd been burned. Julie's breathing grew ragged. Eleanor, she said the only way something like this happens is if someone deliberately perverts the ritual, someone with intimate knowledge of the bearer's birth details. My apartment suddenly felt too small, the walls closing in. Julie was piecing together the truth with terrifying accuracy. That's ridiculous, I said. You said yourself she reads tea leaves for tourists. She's probably trying to sell you some expensive cleansing service. I thought so too. But then she told me something else. Julie's voice dropped to a whisper. She said the jade recognizes me as its bearer, but rejects me simultaneously. Like, it knows my birth signature, but can't properly bind to it. She asked if I was certain about my birth time. The conversation I dreaded for months was finally happening. Julie had found the flaw in my perfect plan, the astronomical misalignment that made the false binding possible. Why would your birth time matter? I asked, stalling for time while my mind raced. That's what I wondered. So I called my mother yesterday afternoon, asked her to dig out my birth certificate and hospital records. The silence stretched between us, heavy with unspoken implications. Eleanor, the times don't match. My hands began to shake. What do you mean? My birth certificate says 3:47 a.m., but the hospital delivery log says 3:47 p.m. 12 hours difference. My mother remembered because the labour was so long. She said I was born just as the afternoon shift was starting, not ending. Julie's voice hardened. Someone used the wrong time for something, didn't they? I couldn't speak, couldn't breathe. Julie had discovered the precise detail that made my revenge possible. Eleanor, are you still there? I'm here, I whispered. I need you to tell me the truth. When you gave me this necklace, did you know something about it that you didn't tell me? This was the moment of complete exposure or perfect deflection. I chose deflection, injecting hurt confusion into my voice. How could I know anything about your birth time? Julie, you're starting to scare me with these conspiracy theories. Then, explain this. Her tone turned sharp, prosecutorial. I checked the records at Morrison and Associates. The Peterson account never complained about my work. In fact, they submitted a written commendation for my performance 3 days before I was fired. HR couldn't explain the discrepancy. The jade was creating evidence trails that led nowhere, but Julie was smart enough to investigate the gaps. I'd underestimated her resourcefulness. Maybe there was a clerical error, Stop lying to me, she screamed, and I heard something crash in the background. I know you're involved somehow. You have to be. You're the only person who knew about the birth certificate discrepancy, and you're the only one who benefits from my downfall. Benefits? Julie, you're my best friend. How do I benefit from your suffering? The Morrison job, she said quietly. The position I was supposed to get. You have it now, don't you? My silence was answer enough. I remember now, Julie continued, her voice growing cold. In college, you used to joke about getting revenge on people who wronged you. You said patience was a virtue because the best revenge always came when people least expected it. You've been planning this for years, haven't you? You're being paranoid. Am I? Because I did some research on your family history too. Your great-great-grandmother didn't bring that jade from China in 1892. She died in the influenza pandemic of 1918, and her estate records show no mention of any jewellery. The sound of pages turning carried through the phone. But I did find something interesting in the city archives. A newspaper article from 1923 about a suspicious death in Chinatown. A young woman named Chen Li fell from a bridge into the harbour. The article mentioned she'd been wearing a jade necklace that was never recovered. My grandmother's story had been a lie. The jade's true history was darker than I'd imagined, and Julie was uncovering layers of deception I hadn't even known existed. That's just a coincidence. The bridge was the same one where you said I pushed you, Julie interrupted. In that nightmare you told me about last month, the one where you died and came back for revenge. I'd made a critical error. In my eagerness to hint at Julie's past betrayal, I'd revealed details that only someone who'd actually experienced them could know. Now, those hints were forming a pattern she could follow. Julie, you need help. Professional help. These paranoid delusions. The jade necklace in that 1923 article, she continued, ignoring my words. The police description matches yours exactly. Same carved characters, same setting, same chain. If your great-great-grandmother died in 1918, how did she pass down a necklace that wasn't found until 1923? The trap I'd built so carefully was collapsing around me. Julie had found the historical thread that unravelled everything. I'm coming over, she said, her voice deadly calm, and I'm bringing bolt cutters. If this necklace is the source of my problems, I'm cutting it off permanently. The line went dead. I stared at the silent phone, realising I'd lost control entirely. Julie knew enough to be dangerous, and she was taking direct action to break the binding. If she removed the jade by force, the supernatural backlash could destroy us both. But perhaps that was exactly what needed to happen. Outside my window, storm clouds gathered despite the weather forecast's promise of clear skies. The jade's power was building towards something final, something that would end this conflict once and for all. I had 30 minutes before Julie arrived. 30 minutes to prepare for the confrontation that would determine which of us survived the truth. I opened my apartment door before Julie could knock. She stood in the hallway, soaked from the supernatural storm, clutching industrial bolt cutters in one hand and her ruined notebook in the other. Dark veins of energy pulsed beneath her skin where the jade touched her throat. "Hello, Julie," I said calmly. "I have been expecting you." She pushed past me, water dripping onto my hardwood floors. "No more games, Eleanor. I know what you did." "Do you?" I closed the door and engaged all 3 locks. "Tell me what you think you know." "You died," she said, turning to face me with wild eyes. "Somehow you actually died, and you came back. The bridge nightmare wasn't a dream, it was a memory." I walked to my kitchen window, watching lightning fracture the sky in unnatural patterns. "Very good. What else?" "I killed you in your previous life, pushed you off the bridge and took your necklace." Her voice cracked. "But I don't remember doing it." If I don't remember, how can you remember? Because death changes you, I said, still gazing at the storm. It strips away the comfortable illusions that make people forget their true nature. When I opened my eyes in my childhood bedroom, I remembered everything, including things that hadn't happened yet. Julie dropped the bolt cutters, the metal clanging against the floor. That's impossible. Is it? You've experienced 3 months of impossible things. Anonymous saboteurs who don't exist, accidents with no earthly cause, a jade necklace that Mrs. Wu called cursed. I turned to face her. Sometimes impossible is just another word for truth you're not ready to accept. Even if I believe you, even if you somehow died and came back, I would never murder my best friend. I'm not capable of that. I laughed, a sound devoid of warmth. You're capable of exactly that. Shall I tell you how it happened? Julie's hand flew to the jade, her fingers tracing its carved surface. No. It was March 18th, 2022. You'd been wearing my necklace for 8 months, stealing luck that belonged to my bloodline. You'd gotten the Morrison job, the penthouse apartment. Even Alex fell in love with you instead of me. Everything that should have been mine became yours. Stop. But you got greedy. You researched the jade's history and discovered the binding ritual. You wanted to carve your own birth date alongside mine, make the power permanent. I stepped closer, and she backed against the wall. I caught you at the bridge that night, silver needle in your hand, ready to perform the ritual under the full moon. Julie shook her head frantically. I wouldn't. You would. You did. When I tried to stop you, you pushed me. You stood there watching me drown while you carved your birth date into my family's jade. But you made the same mistake then that I corrected this time. You used the wrong birth time. I don't remember any of this. Because the ritual failed. The jade rejected your false binding and shattered when it hit the water. The supernatural backlash erased your memories of that night, but it couldn't undo what you'd done. I died, and you lived with stolen time. Thunder crashed overhead, and the lights flickered. Julie slumped against the wall, the fight draining out of her. So you came back for revenge, she whispered. I came back for justice. I picked up the bolt cutters she dropped. The jade you're wearing now contains your death date, Julie, not your birth date, the moment you'll die. September 26th, 2025, at 11:47 p.m. Her eyes went wide with terror. What time is it now? I glanced at my phone. 11:43 p.m. Take it off me. She clawed at the chain around her neck, but her fingers passed through it like smoke. Eleanor, please, take it off. I can't. Only you can remove it, but the jade won't let you. It's bound to you now, waiting for the appointed moment. I set the bolt cutters on my coffee table. Those won't work either. The chain exists in multiple dimensions. Physical tools can't cut supernatural bonds. There has to be a way. Tears streamed down her face as she pulled frantically at the necklace. I'm sorry, okay? I'm sorry for whatever I did in the other timeline. I'll do anything. Anything? I tilted my head, considering. There is one way to break the binding. Hope flashed in her eyes. Tell me. True remorse. If you can feel genuine regret for betraying me, the jade might release you. I smiled coldly. But it has to be real, Julie. The kind of remorse that comes from accepting what you're truly capable of. She fell to her knees, sobbing. I'm sorry, Eleanor. I'm so sorry. Please forgive me. 11:45, I announced. 2 minutes left. I don't know how to feel sorry for something I don't remember doing. Then let me help you remember. I pressed my palm against her forehead, and the jade flared with brilliant green light. Suddenly, Julie was experiencing my memories, standing on the bridge in her timeline, silver needle gleaming in the moonlight, the cold calculation in her eyes as she pushed her best friend to her death. She screamed as the memories flooded her consciousness, reliving the betrayal from both perspectives simultaneously. Now she could feel her past self's greed, her casual willingness to commit murder for supernatural power, her complete lack of remorse as she watched me drown. "I'm a monster," she gasped, the words torn from her throat. "Oh God, Eleanor, I'm a monster." The jade began to crack. 11:46, I said softly. "I deserve this," Julie whispered, true understanding finally dawning in her eyes. "I deserve everything that's happened to me. You didn't curse me, I cursed myself the moment I chose power over friendship." The jade cracked further, hairline fractures spreading across its surface. "1 minute. But you know what's funny?" Julie looked up at me through her tears, and for a moment I saw the friend I'd once loved. "Even knowing what I'm capable of, even facing death, I still don't regret taking the necklace the first time. I only regret getting caught." The jade went completely dark. 11:47, I said. Julie smiled, her face serene despite the supernatural energy crackling around her. "I guess some people really are beyond redemption." The jade exploded. When the green light faded, Julie lay motionless on my floor, the shattered remains of the necklace scattered around her body. But she was breathing, unconscious but alive. I knelt beside her, checking her pulse, strong and steady. The jade had accepted her final moment of honesty as sufficient payment for her crimes. She would live, but she would remember everything now. Both timelines, both betrayals, the full weight of what she was capable of. My phone buzzed with a text message from an unknown number. "The Morrison account is requesting a meeting tomorrow at 9 a.m. They specifically asked for Julie Morrison to handle their expansion project." Julie Morrison. Not Julie whatever her last name was now. The jade had restored her original timeline position, but with full knowledge of what she had lost through her own choices. I gathered the jade fragments carefully. They were still warm, still humming with residual power. 5 generations of my family's luck had been shattered to teach one person the price of betrayal. "Worth it," Julie stirred as I finished cleaning up the pieces. "Eleanor," she whispered, "I'm here. Am I dead? No. You get to live with the memories of both timelines. You get to wake up every morning knowing exactly who you are and what you're capable of." I helped her sit up. "You get to be the person who pushed her best friend off a bridge every day for the rest of your life." She nodded slowly, accepting the weight of eternal remorse. "The Morrison job is yours again," I said, standing. "Your apartment, your life, everything returns to how it should have been. But you'll remember the cost." As I walked her to the door, Julie touched my arm. Can we still be friends?" I looked at her, really looked at her, seeing both the innocent girl I'd grown up with and the murderer she'd become. "Ask me in another lifetime," I said, and closed the door. Outside, the supernatural storm had ended. Inside, justice had been served. Some revenge is worth dying for. Some rebirth is worth the price of forgiveness denied.